All right. I'm going to go ahead and kick us off. I'm sure we'll have a couple stragglers coming in as the morning settles in, people getting stuck in traffic and everything like that. But I welcome all of you. This is the Columbia Chamber Small Business Breakout. Since COVID, we've been combined with our counterpart, the Northeast Connection. But our goal is to connect with small businesses, local businesses, large businesses, to add value and provide resources to the problems that they face every day. So we have one of these breakouts every month, typically every month besides July and December. And we're talking about different issues that businesses face of all sizes, whether it comes to legal issues or HR issues or recruitment issues, which is what we're talking about today, or if it's marketing, if it's back of house accounting, if anything and everything related to business, to try and provide resources or connections to partners that you might need. That being said, I'm going to go ahead and go over a couple housekeeping things. We want to make sure that we know who all we're connecting with. So I encourage you to hover over your little Brady Bunch picture that you got. If you click those three dots, you can click rename, and that will say you can put your name and the company that you're with. That way we can connect with people and start to build relationships. Maybe you've got to reach out and connect with people offline. I also encourage everyone to drop their information into the chat. I'm putting my first and last name and my email address. So feel free, if there's anything I can help you with, please reach out. So that's my name, and my email is in the chat right there. You can reach out to me if you have any questions or information about the Small Business Council or getting involved in the chamber. I'm Jared, I'm with Splash Omni Media, and I'm the current chair of the Small Business Council here at the chamber. So if you're interested or have any type of interest in getting involved here, please reach out to me or one of the chamber staff members. We'd be glad to help you get involved. So we're going to jump right into things. Our first panelist today is Michael Henthorne from Ogletree Deakins. Michael's going to give us some insight as to the legal aspects of some things that are going on in the world around vaccines and COVID and what you're allowed to do. And I'm not going to try and speak too much on what he's going to talk about because I don't want to have any type of liability or anything like that. So I'm going to kick it over to you, Michael. Feel free to share your screen, and we appreciate having you.
Thanks so much, Jared. Good morning, everybody. It's good to be with you all. I think if we were to talk in depth about how to manage legal hurdles during the time of COVID, this could really be more of a day-long or maybe even multi-day seminar. So what I'd like to do this morning is just sort of issue spot with you, make sure that you see what some of the bigger issues are, and then provide some resources for you. I'm really anxious to hear from Megan because I know so many of my clients are really struggling with finding and retaining employees. But I'm going to talk about a few other things. Give me just a second to share my screen. So let's start with this idea. And I think if you're involved with managing employees or just any aspect of the employment relationship, what you found is that managing the legal issues that you encounter as an employer, regardless of size, has never ever been more challenging than it is right now. And there are so many things that we could talk about. And I encourage you to, as you get more involved in the Columbia Chamber, to have conversations, to have these conversations with each other. We're all just a little bit stronger together than we are sort of working in our silos by ourselves. And the other thing that I would encourage you is don't try to fight this battle alone. There's so much information, not all of it's accurate. So let's work together as much as we can. Let's jump in and talk about vaccines. Now, why is this topic the subject of so much controversy, consternation, and just downright fierce debate? Well, that's a really complicated question. This topic encompasses so much, from political and socioeconomic views. You have religion, you have misinformation, and just downright false information. If you remember watching the news in March of 2020, and you realize that in September of 2021, the lead stories pretty much stay the same, other than whatever's going on in Hampton County. So the information is evolving. We're seeing advice that we got a year ago may or may not be fully accurate now. And so with that comes a number of just plain human emotions like ambivalence, fear, distrust. And I don't know about all of you, but there are times when I think trying to deal with this topic is a lot like walking into a Barnes and Noble and saying, remember when we had Barnes and Noble? Yeah, I'm that old. But a lot like walking in and saying, I'd really like a new book, and then getting absolutely overwhelmed with all of the choices and information that are screaming at us from our iPhones and from our televisions. So the vaccine issue is a really difficult topic to manage. As far as the elephant in the room, for more than a year, employees have been asking this question: can we require our employees to be vaccinated? And so generally the answer is, and it has been for some time, an affirmative answer. Yes, you can. And even though the employers, we would give this advice, what we found, and we're, for some context, we're the third largest labor and employment firm in the world. We have 3 offices in South Carolina, and we deal with clients from, a couple of employees to, to some Fortune 50 companies. And even though we were getting this question, we are answering it, yes, you can require your employees to be vaccinated, there was a real reluctance. We even saw some clients trying to back into where rather than require vaccination, they would require testing instead of vaccination. Well, despite advice that we were giving and really employment lawyers across the country were giving, then came September 9th of this year. And shout out to my main man, Lester, there. On September 9th, the president announced his vaccine plan. And as part of that plan, he directed OSHA to develop an emergency temporary standard that would require employees that have 100 or more employees to ensure that their workforce is either fully vaccinated, that is, having both shots or just the one shot if the employee elected the Johnson & Johnson variety. So either fully vaccinated or tested weekly for COVID-19 and produce proof of a negative result in order to come back into the workplace. So the other things that we currently know about the emergency temporary standard is that employers will have to provide paid time off for employees to get those vaccinations. Employees can seek exemptions on one of 2 grounds, either disability under the ADA or religious objection under Title VII. And the White House was saying then and now that will impact about 80 million workers. Now, when an emergency temporary standard, it's a placeholder. It's designed to create a rule that we can all operate with the understanding that a final rule will ultimately be made permanent. Now, here's the thing. Remember, we said that this announcement was made on September 9th of this year. We're still waiting for that standard, that emergency temporary standard, to be issued. So there's some things we don't know that, again, are causing some, I wouldn't say fear or apprehension, just uncertainty. And we all know how unsteadying that can be. So we don't know when the emergency temporary standard will be issued. We don't know, so what's the timeline? What's that deadline that we have to have our workforce either fully vaccinated or submitted to weekly testing? We understand that as employers that we have to pay for the vaccinations. Do we have to pay for the weekly testing? We don't know what proof of vaccination will be required or accepted. We don't know whether employees who are waiting for a test result will be eligible to collect unemployment benefit while waiting. And we don't understand, we don't fully know. We can guess, but we don't fully know how the emergency temporary standard will define the term employer. Now, South Carolina state law has a definition of employee that is constraining, because the definition is an employee is someone who's employed by an employer. That's not a great deal of help when you're trying to find these definitions and work with them. So we're hopeful that the ETS will give us some better information when it's issued. Now, so what we think is likely. So we know we don't. What we think is likely is that the ETS will be issued in October with some sort of 60 to 90 day implementation. We think OSHA will currently use the Department of Labor definition of employer, that employers will probably have to pay for the COVID testing, and that we'll use our vaccination cards with our employers, much like we would if we decided to go on a cruise. Now, here's the thing I want everyone to remember. So the day that the ETS is announced, what I think is likely and what I think you can fully expect is that ETS is going to be challenged in court. As a matter of fact, there have been 7 states, including the state of South Carolina, that have essentially stepped forward and said, when the ETS is issued, we're going to challenge it in court, and that's going to cause even more delay. Remember, there are 2 exemptions that you need to be thinking about for employees in response to the emergency temporary standard, if it applies to you. And that is, number 1, that employees who have disabilities can seek an exemption based on those disabilities. That's created a lot of questions. But what I want you to remember is that you would approach this the same way and with the same interactive process that you would do with any other disability accommodation request. So in that vein, it's not really that new. There's also been a lot of debate about the religious exemption. You know, can employees get an exemption from the vaccine requirement based on their religious belief? And so that's created a firestorm of debate about what is a sincerely held religious belief. And what I see most employment lawyers doing is they're assuming that there's a sincerely held religious belief, because the court is not going to spend a whole lot of time on that. If you're aware of facts or an objective basis to challenge how sincere that belief is, that's one thing. But other than that, I think you want to jump directly to the issue of, does this exemption cause my workforce an undue hardship? These are all questions that you want to engage your employment counsel with. And again, you don't want to fight through all this alone. If you're a government contractor, make a note right now to give me a call so I can put you in touch with a woman in my office named Lee Nason. Executive Order 14042 has been issued, created a firestorm of questions. And so I think for our purposes, the most valuable thing I can give you today is to be able to answer the question for yourself and have confidence in your answer. I either am or I am not a government contractor, and understand that this executive order has some ambiguity in it in terms of who is and who is not subject. So if you think that you provide services to the federal government that exceeds $250,000, let me know so I can put you in touch with some resources.
5 minutes, Michael.
Thank you. There is some sense of urgency here for those that are federal contractors, because those covered employees must be fully vaccinated by the beginning of December. What does that mean? Well, that means that employees need to have their second shot or their Johnson & Johnson vaccination before Thanksgiving. So time is certainly of the essence. Vaccination privacy. I've got a few slides in here, and it's my understanding that the presentation is going to be posted and available to everyone. But I've got a few slides about vaccination privacy. There's some real questions here, and I think we're starting to detect a theme about ambiguities and unanswered questions, despite the legislature and the president's efforts to create laws that we can all operate under. You know, one of those questions, how private is my vaccination status as an employee? And what about employees that attempt to fake their proof of vaccination? Well, again, I've got a couple slides, and let me just hit the highlights rather than go through each bullet point. The big highlights are this: treat vaccination records and responses to vaccination questions. Because remember, as an employer, you can ask the question, are you fully vaccinated? But treat those records and responses as confidential medical information, just like you would do any medical information that you get as a result of an FMLA request or a workers' compensation accident. And what I mean by that is, don't maintain vaccination records and responses in an employee's personnel file. You want to keep that separate from the personnel file, and you want to make sure that it's locked and that access to that information is both limited and protected. For the last 27 years, I've been a litigator. And what that means is I represent employees that are sued by their employees. I don't get invited to a lot of parties. I'm not real popular until you need me. But that's the life I've chosen for almost 3 decades. And I will tell you that Ogletree, like a number of firms, are tracking COVID-related lawsuits. And all I can tell you is that they are already here, and that we can expect a massive amount of litigation related to COVID-19. Again, don't want to try to navigate that by yourself. There is so much more for us to talk about. There's employee safety, and we just touched on the tip of the iceberg with OSHA's emergency temporary standard. There are staffing issues. Heard more and more about employees accepting jobs and not showing up. We've heard about employees that submit for video interviews and they have someone else appear in their stead. So the person that shows up to work is not the person that got hired and made such a good impression. There's unemployment, our normal discrimination, harassment, retaliation claims, diversity inclusion issues. How do you manage leaves of absence, wage and hour issues? There is a rising interest and rising conversation about labor unions. And of course, there's the ever-present social media that causes employers so much lost sleep, I would think. So we can help. Wherever you are, and especially in Columbia, we are down in the Bull Street District, right next to the Firefly Stadium. And we would love to help you. I personally have a real heart for small business, and would love to be a resource either to help you or to point you in the right direction. In the meantime, take a look at, if you'd go to Ogletree, www.ogletree.com, and you'll see a radio button for COVID-19 resources. And you'll see a number of webinars and insights and publications designed to help you. If there's anything that we can do to help you navigate this difficult time, more than happy to do that. And with that, I'm anxious to hear from Megan.
Thanks, Michael. A lot of valuable information there. A lot of beneficial information. Like we said, the slides will be available, and obviously Michael and his team at Ogletree Deakins are available at all times. Got a really sweet office over there by Seger Park. But as the ever-changing, I guess, legal landscape of workforce and what's going on in workforce development, it's also happening with staffing. I know specifically a lot of our clients are manufacturing, and they're operating at 50 to 60% capacity, and trying to find people is common. I mean, I'm sure y'all have been to a restaurant or a fast food joint and seen a sign that says we're now operating at different hours because we don't have the staff. So I want to kick it over to Megan Graham with Find Great People to talk about some of the issues that the staffing world is facing. Take it away, Megan.
Thanks, Jared. And Michael, thank you. Having worked in talent and talent acquisition in the Midlands specifically for over 15 years, I don't think that I have heard yet someone else showing up for a video interview that is different than the person who shows up for the job. So it's not often that we get a first on our side of the coin. But you've taught me that I should have maybe a little bit of an expectation for that. So excited to be with you all this morning. I have the good fortune of talking about the less legal side, and the side that I think really positively and sometimes negatively can affect your business, which is people and how you manage them. So give me just a moment to share my screen. Okay. So we're talking today about managing talent in a candidate-driven market. That is very different than the market that we were in 3-4 years ago, when it seemed that you could easily interview 5 to 7 people for every open requisition that your business had. So that takes a different approach as we identify talent, and then also a bit of a different strategy to retain the talent that we've identified in years prior to ensure that you don't suffer from turnover and the cost associated. So a little bit about me. I've been with FGP since 2017. I started in a search role, so helping individuals identify new roles and working with organizations across the state to determine who best fits those roles. I've since moved into a leadership role where I have an opportunity to consult with our clients and also have exposure to several hundred businesses and the opportunities, we'll call them opportunities, they have around talent and the acquisition of talent in our current market. So we'll talk about 4 main areas today. We're going to talk about navigating an alternative workforce model. Call it post-pandemic, call it mid-pandemic, right? I'm not sure that we all know where we stand, but the reality is our work model has changed. And maybe it hasn't changed for every organization, but we'll talk about why revisiting that may help with talent acquisition and retention. Managing the COVID/vaccine guidelines in your workforce. So less of the legal management of those guidelines and more about the delivery and how important that is. Creating and maintaining a winning culture, finding and transitioning talent. So first part to think about is your workforce model. So before we get into details, I would just challenge you to stretch what you think is normal if you haven't done that through the pandemic. So what really matters when you're ensuring success of your business? Is it connectivity? Yes, absolutely. It's being connected to your people as a leader, as a coworker, as a team member. Being connected to your teammates almost always positively impacts your business. The difference, though, is connection in the past to us has looked like physical connection. We can see, we can walk up to someone's desk and understand the project they're on. We can offer help. So changing your mindset a little bit around the idea of connectivity. It really doesn't have to be physicality. It can just be through intentional connection. So whether that is a 5-minute individual meeting that's on Teams or Zoom with a teammate, or a touch point that you schedule for yourself as a business owner or leader of a practice area. That really goes a long way when you are in a remote or hybrid workforce model. The next piece that I think is important as we approach really making sure our workforce model is attractive to those that we'd like to hire is your mindset. So prior to pandemic, I would fall in the bucket of individuals that really preferred to work physically on site with my team. For me, I'm an athlete. I played soccer in college, and that team environment for me in person always meant better results. So I really had to challenge myself through the pandemic to grow differently than my current mindset. And that's a huge piece of growing your business forward in our new normal. Are there some roles that always have to be on site? Absolutely. But there are some roles within your business and within your different disciplines that maybe don't have to be. So I challenge everyone to think about how you make it work instead of why it won't work, especially if you have someone that you trust in that role. How do we offer additional flexibility? And that rolls directly into being flexible as often as you are able. So no one size fits all approach. The thought here, and our CEO, John U. Pritchard, did an opinion piece that is linked on our website. It's just fgp.com. He talks a little bit about his mindset shift through the pandemic around workforce planning, and that we don't have to issue a top line policy to the whole organization, right? So there are departments that large in part could be remote and might be able to be remote forever. And then there are, of course, positions like skilled labor or line-based roles or line leadership in a manufacturing setting. Those are very difficult to ever move remote. So consider allowing your divisional leaders to establish process for your workforce model that works for their group instead of the company as a whole. Generally speaking, if you've hired the right people, this really drives buy-in. It allows them to have a bit more flexibility. It allows them to be seen, heard, and feel valued, which leads to additional retention in those groups. Managing COVID guidelines. So really high level here because Michael did an excellent job on the legal piece. The opportunity you have in managing COVID guidelines, policy, vaccination guidelines is to make sure that you are communicating early and often with your engage internal core team members prior to company-wide delivery. So I want to pause there because prior to working with FGP, I had never been asked from a leadership perspective to engage core team members, those that have been with the organization for 5+ years, who really were our internal stakeholders, and help them, engage them to help me solve for how the team would like to hear the message, right? They all understand that the message is coming, but understanding how it would be better digested and maybe even delivered from coworkers is an opportunity to really engage and make sure your core team members feel valued and heard, because these topics are divisive by nature. So when you bring people together and you hear them, you're creating a camaraderie, even if there are different viewpoints in the room, on the best path forward for the organization as a whole. Seek to listen and understand when feedback is offered. I'm never the smartest person in the room. I am a really good listener. So I think it's to your benefit when you gather these key team members to really truly be there to listen. Don't be there with an opinion. Don't have kind of a process in mind that you intend to move forward on before hearing them out. And then lastly, keep your focus on why as an organization. So it's very easy to become internally focused. It is human nature. We are all emotionally predictable. When things are mandated, that's happening to us, right? Not for us. So helping them understand as a leader why this is beneficial for the organization, why the decision was made, and then helping navigate those that intend to follow guidelines and maybe those that intend to separate from the organization as a whole. And both are a reality that you have to lead through. All right, so hot topic right now, of course, is acquiring and retaining talent. Creating and maintaining a winning culture starts and stops with people and how you treat them. So we can talk through the basics, of course. First is sourcing. The most important thing, and this will probably sound counterproductive because I work with a recruiting group that does this, but the first thing that you should do as a small business owner or department leader is incentivize your teammates to refer people they know. So taking just a quick pause from the presentation to talk stats. Retention stats are alarming right now. So it's important that you know that 45% of referrals from your current team members are retained after 2 years, 45%. Any candidate that you find elsewhere, whether that be job boards, an external recruiting source, according to the Society of Human Resource Management, after 2 years has a 25% retention rate. So you, by incentivizing your internal team to refer individuals to work there, you are increasing your retention percentage by 20%, and you're also decreasing a fee associated. Now, I do think incentivizing your team is important. So that could look like a referral bonus program. It could even look like a secondary bonus when their person that they've referred has been retained for a year and then 2 years. Believe it or not, that's almost always your least expensive option and impacts your bottom line in the most positive way. A great secondary option is job boards and external recruiting services. And my advice there is, as you choose wisely. Make sure that you have a partner that understands your business, that they aren't just filling the seat that you need, but they understand the business problem you're solving through that person. Second piece is speed. So generally speaking, in our market in the Midlands, we are seeing positions that pay anywhere from, I'd say, $25,000 a year to about $50,000 a year. Those candidates, when they begin actively looking for a job currently, they typically have at least one offer within the week. So time starts on Monday, they open up their LinkedIn profile, they begin applying to roles. By Friday, they likely have an offer. So speed and process is very important in the market currently. However, that does not mean that we take out steps that are very important for evaluating for a permanent fit with your team. That does mean that before we begin interviewing, we align everyone's calendars so we can move through those steps very quickly. And if there are any steps that can be combined, consider that in your interview process. Moving quickly also sends the right message to the talent that you're interviewing. If you're sure that they are the correct candidate, there's no harm in giving them a verbal offer on site with the understanding that it's pending background or any other onboarding requirements that your organization has, and then to follow it with a written offer letter. So just use your time wisely and make good decisions as quickly as possible. And then last is compensation. So every organization is paying more today for the exact same talent than they did 18 months ago. That's a reality of our market. If you're not paying more today, then you're likely having a really hard time filling your open roles. So how do we combat that? Well, we have barriers in place. Not everyone can pay more now than they did 18 months ago, right? Businesses are impacted differently by the pandemic. So how do we get creative? There's two ways. We pay more, right? That's the first answer. The second is we identify really high potential candidates that maybe 18 months or 2 years ago you wouldn't have considered based on their skill set. General rule of thumb is if you can train them to do the job in less than 4 weeks, you will have a productive person on your team in a much quicker fashion than you would find someone for that skill set in this market if you're having compensation challenges. So consider different backgrounds for a role that in the past you would have required, for example, 3 years of accounts payable and receivable experience. Well, now you may consider someone who worked in a retail-based setting that did really heavy cash handling and had to balance their drawer at the end of the night. Those are very transferable skill sets as long as the right attitude in the candidate is present.
5 minutes, Megan.
Thank you. Acquiring and retaining talent. So retaining new talent. Onboarding needs to look a little bit differently now. So some best practices for onboarding is just a more comprehensive, intentional approach. So think more than first week or second week. Think full integration to the team. So another stat from Society of Human Resource Management, 33% of new employees know in the first week of employment if they intend to stay beyond 6 months. 1/3 of your workforce makes that decision in their first week of employment. Why is that important? Couple things. We're all busy. We're all doing less with more right now based on our talent shortage. So if we are not planned and intentional, we could inadvertently offer a first week that's less than stellar, right? How do we make sure that doesn't happen? Schedule time with the person on site. Make sure that they meet the people on the team, whether that's virtual or on site. Make sure they understand your customer base and give them a really warm welcome. Ensure you have technical and culture components built into training. And then most important, assign a mentor. That could be a colleague on the same team, a colleague from a different team, but make sure they have someone that they don't report to, that they feel comfortable going to, and they have scheduled time together every week for their first 90 days. Okay, retaining current talent, best practices. So I'm going to run through these quickly in the sake of time, but of course I'm happy to share these slides later and talk more through them with you directly. Spend intentional time with your current employees. Maintain a discipline on employee meetings and communication. Company-wide meetings are great, but more important, the direct leader meeting with a teammate and having a more than meeting. A more than meeting is diving deeper. It's not critiquing key metrics for the following week. It's not understanding, why they were 2% below metrics. It's more than that. It's understanding the person. What's important to them? What do they do outside of work? How can you as their leader connect what they do in your office each day to their goals outside of work? It's a more than meeting. Lastly, hold listening sessions. If there's a piece of your business that feels off and it's been off for a couple months, get them together and figure out why. Second, appreciation. I love the art of a handwritten note. I think it's a lost art and it's important. When someone's doing something that really benefits your group or your business, and you can tell that they've taken a step above and beyond, recognize that. Encourage peer-to-peer recognition and share success stories. Next is social cohesion. Take the first 5 minutes of every meeting and learn something about a team member or multiple team members that you don't know. Create social experience with intentionality. These can be virtual, they can be in person. One thing that Find Great People has done through the pandemic is included a lunch workout where a trainer comes in at lunch and we all have an opportunity to take a brain break. We can't always do that in every setting, but there is something you can do to socially connect your teammates. And then last is a video message from leadership. So if your group is primarily remote, it's fun to receive a quick video message on a Monday morning or a Friday afternoon from your owner, your CEO, your department leader that's just thankful and grateful for the work done that week and highlights some wins within the group. So how can Find Great People help? Well, first, we're a recruiting firm. So we, of course, are able to help with open positions. We have 3 different groups. We have a recruiting group, which does operations-based support roles, accounting and finance, and IT. We have a search group that is actually a national and international practice that does executive level search. And then last, and maybe most important right now, we have a consulting group. So if there's a problem to solve, if there is internal coaching needed for a new leader, this consulting group can help with that. Compensation studies. The great news is we're truly able to cater to what you need. And then lastly, I'm gonna leave you with a quote that rings true to me and has since my early 20s, with a goal of just being a leader. At that time, I certainly wasn't one. I'm really grateful for your time, and the quote that I'll leave you with is, whoever wants to become a great leader must become a great servant. Team is not there to work for you. You are there to work for them. Thank you.
I love that. Thanks, Megan. Really appreciate you joining us today. Michael as well, thank you for joining us today. I want to open it up to our attendees. Anybody has any questions, this is your time. If you have questions that you'd like to ask directly to our panelists, then go ahead. If you'd like to drop those in the chat, feel free to utilize it that way. I want to open up the floor. Anybody? Megan, I guess I have a question. If what industries do you see are being affected the most in staffing?
Sure. Yeah, great question. So I think it's more important to think through skill set even than industry. So the skill sets that an individual may have currently that are the most difficult to retain and find are any skilled trade or manufacturing skilled trade. Legal support is very difficult and very in demand currently. Accounting and finance above an entry level role. So think staff accountant on up. Those roles are in very, very high demand. And then from an executive search level, employment law attorneys specifically, very difficult to find with experience. And then I would say second to that at an executive level is probably a chief revenue officer or CFO. And the reason for that is there's not an appetite to change in those roles currently. And that's because there's so much work to be done in the seat. People can't even think about looking for a new role most of the time. There has to be a huge pain point.
Gotcha. That was going to be my
Great
second question is why is the need, especially for that seat level and higher? I can definitely see it being the skilled trades and trying to get people to, and within food and beverage and that, trying to get people to go back to work in those industries. But it's interesting to hear those, the staff accountant, the C level, the higher up. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have a question?
Sure, and I do. And this is both to Megan and Michael. Megan mentioned flexibility and trust. Most of the chamber members are small, so you probably wouldn't have too many divisions and groups that can do their own thing. And probably some of the, maybe some even on this call, how can I be flexible with a small work group? And the legal ramifications of allowing flexibility with one and not with the other. Those are concerns that small businesses have.
So Michael, why don't you take the legal piece first so that I don't misstep?
I will. Thanks, Megan, and Henry, thanks for a great question. You know, forever, we've been going to employment law seminars, and what do we hear when we go to them? We hear three things. We hear things that are designed to make us afraid so that we hire the speaker, right? And we hear document. I swore I would strangle the next employment lawyer that used that phrase in a seminar, and I just did. But third, what we've always heard is we got to be really careful that we treat all of our employees exactly the same. And I think if we do that, we're missing a great opportunity. All our workforces are not the same. All of our employees don't have the same skill set. I think if we were ever in a time where we need cross collaboration and cross training, it's now. Now, here's the difference. What we don't want to do is we don't want to make employment related decisions based on a person's protected characteristic. And we all know what that laundry list is. But if we're talking about how do we change where we work to more fully engage our entire workforce and work across those lines that we may or may not have drawn intentionally or unintentionally, now's the time to answer that question.
Yeah, great question, Henry. The piece that I'll add as well is great people on your team as a small business owner are probably your most valuable asset, right? So I think great people are worth keeping on your team in any seat. And so what I would do with someone who, let's say they're coming in each day and packaging orders for me in a small manufacturing setting, maybe I have 10 employees or less. As their leader, if I know their goal is eventual more flexibility for their family, then I'm going to explore that with them. When do they pack orders for me? You know, what's the pain point? Is it 3 to 5 after kids are off of school? How do we make that right? What can we do to be creative to retain that person? How, as their leader, can I build their skills and show them a path into a role that has flexibility? Because they're really helping me in the role that they're in, but I just want them on the team, period, right? Mm-hmm. So if you can identify a path and empower an individual, most people show up for you when you show up for them. So they may not be exactly where they'd like to be today, but you show them the value that they add. You be as flexible as you can in the current situation, and then show them a path forward.
Okay. Thank you.
Awesome. Anybody else with a question before I kick it over to some of our chamber staff for updates on upcoming events? Well, I just want to say thank you again to Michael and Megan for their input today. We'll have the slides up on the chamber website, I believe. Also, the meeting, this breakout is recorded, so it will be on the chamber YouTube channel. So feel free to reference that or point people in the right direction. If you have anybody or know anyone that has questions relevant to what we've talked about today, we do this every month. So next month is our roundtable discussion where we ask you guys, what do you need from the chamber for the next year so we can develop our programming to provide resources and information and education and networking opportunities to help you grow your business or navigate some of those pain points of your business. So feel free to put us on the calendar for next month. That will be, confirm the date before I tell you anything wrong. November 16th. November 16th. So 8:30 to 9:30 right here on Zoom, November 16th. We hope to see you all back. Invite somebody, bring somebody. It's a very engaging discussion. We depend on all of you to provide answers and input and insight. So please come back, and we hope to see you next month. And I will kick it over to Susan.
Hey, and good morning. Thank you, Jared. Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Megan, and thank you, everybody, for being with us today. Listening to Megan and Michael, it makes me appreciate, and I'm very grateful for the 30 years I served in human resources and employee relations, and I'm very grateful to be working in public policy, military affairs, and small business now. So good to be on the other side. But I did want to take just a minute. We have some great opportunities coming up for you to be involved. On this Thursday, we have a partner engagement up at the Next and Pruitt Rooftop Plaza. It's going to be a great Columbia Chamber of Commerce beautiful day. So come on out and join us at 4:30 for that event. It'll be a lot of fun, great view of the city and great business associates. And then on October the 27th, we'll be doing our partner orientation. And this is actually for new partners, but we encourage existing partners and potential partners to come because we walk you through all the benefits of not only what the chamber does for you, but what we can help you do for your business in promoting your various opportunities, services, and events coming up. And then on November the 2nd, that is election day here in the city. This is an extremely critical time for us. We're going to be selecting our next mayor. We're going to be selecting our next city council candidates. And so we just really would encourage you to get out and know your options, know what they stand for, know what their focus is for moving us forward, because obviously leadership in this regard is what's going to move us forward as we build our economic development opportunities and work hard to retain talent, make sure that we keep all those great people here, right, Megan? So I put in the chat box the information that Meg and Anna put together on all of the elections coming up, as well as on the School District 1 election. So please check that out. We have a great opportunity to go have some fun. We have a sporting play event on November the 18th, and that is going to be a great opportunity to get out in the field and shoot at some very fun sporting play targets. So we hope you'll come out and join us for that. It's a great time to be outdoors and meet new people. And so if there is anything that we can do for you, we also have the new Midlands Minority Business Accelerator program, and you can find that on the website as well. And it's going to do a great job of trying to help us build our small businesses as we work directly with small business owners and helping them to not only understand the widgets that they sell, but the process behind managing the widgets and all of the supply room and the people issues. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for what you do in the city, and thank you and the county, and thank you for your support of the chamber. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Susan. I don't think I touched on this earlier. A lot of good information in the chat here. I see that Megan just answered a question. If you open the chat, you can click the 3 dots and then click Save Chat. So you can save all of the information that was provided here today so you can reference it later. So just wanted, before we ended the meeting, wanted to give anybody who wanted to save the chat an opportunity to do so. But yeah, a lot of good things coming up with the chamber. A lot of things put on your calendar. Hope to see everybody at least at the partner engagement on Thursday. That's going to be a lot of fun. And appreciate all of you for coming out today.
Thank you.
Jared, I have one other thing. Of course, I can't let a meeting go by without talking about the Minority Business Accelerator. Next month, keep watching, you'll get notice of that. We will have some information sessions for businesses who are interested in joining the Minority Business Accelerator. The mission of the Minority Business Accelerator is to help accelerate the development of high potential minority business enterprises in the Midlands and strengthen them and expand our region's minority entrepreneurial community. We will have between 8 and 12 companies in there. There will be coaches, 2 coaches at least, for each business in that accelerator. If you want to learn more, keep tuned. We will send information out where you can apply, or if you just want to hear whether or not you're a good fit for it. So stay tuned. Thank you, Jared.
Thanks, Henry. Anybody else have anything for the good of the group before we dismiss? I hope you guys all have a great day.
Hey, how are you?
Hope to see you back next month.
Have a great
Yes,
day.
ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Good day, thanks.
Thank you.